Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 363, continuing with Brahman, Purusha, Ishvara. And the last two lines begin a new sentence. In the philosophy of the Sankhya's. So we read it, and now you'll explain.
We have read it. We'll read each sentence and see whether it is clear.
Good.
In the philosophy of the Sankhya's, we find developed most thoroughly the metaphysical idea of Purusha Prakriti. These are two eternally separate entities, but in relation to each other. So, Purusha is consciousness and Prakriti is nature or force. If you think of it as Chit, then this is force. If you think of that as Purusha, this is Prakriti. The difference being Purusha is fully conscious and Prakriti is in the philosophy of the Sankhya, because they are at a particular level. Prakriti is mechanical, unconscious energy. Okay? So, and if you go to a higher level where the Sankhya philosophy does not go, then you start seeing things in a different way. Okay? So Purusha Prakriti also there are many grades. But we'll see what he's saying here.
Yeah, what is the higher level where it doesn't exist?
Okay, now this needs a little bit of a clarification because we speak of three levels. The lowest is the lower hemisphere, body, mind, life, matter, life and mind. Second level is the spiritual planes of consciousness where you are not identified with your body, mind, life. The consciousness has come out, it is liberated and you are in the ideal planes of consciousness or the spiritual planes of consciousness, which different people see in different ways, but Sri Aurobindo limits them to 4 planes: higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, overmind. Above the overmind, you could say it is level 3 because qualitatively it becomes quite different. So, the higher is when you are in the spiritual planes of consciousness, it need not necessarily be higher in that sense, because even at the lower level of the higher mind, lower in the second grade, you can have touches of these higher planes of experience, you can have touches. It won't be permanent, but it will have touches.
And so the Sankhya's?
Yeah, that's right. In the Sankhya
Where are they?
Yeah. So in the Sankhya philosophy, they see Purusha and Prakriti as separate, but always together. They are always together. Chit and Shakti. You see them both together, but they are different. Whereas in the level 1, our level, we never see Purusha. We see only Prakriti. We see only nature. We don't see the consciousness hiding behind nature. We don't see. So this is the characteristic of this one, the level 1. Level 2 is where Sankhya is applicable. Then when you go even to the supramental level, Sankhya is not applicable anymore because Purusha and Prakriti become one.
Ah, yes.
Chit and consciousness and force become one. Consciousness implies force and force implies consciousness. But in the spiritual planes of consciousness, they are together always but separate. Okay? So, these two are eternally separate entities. But in relation to each other, Prakriti is nature power, an executive power. It is energy apart from consciousness. It is not conscious. It is just pure energy apart from consciousness. For consciousness belongs to the Purusha. Okay? And another detail of the Purusha in Sankhya philosophy, that it is a personal aspect of consciousness. Consciousness can have a personal aspect. You are a person and your consciousness is either cosmic or little more than cosmic, or even sometimes touches of the transcendent. But you feel it as an individual, as a person. Whereas you can feel the consciousness as an impersonal aspect also. So Sankhya is usually there is a stress on the personal aspect. You as an individual are experiencing consciousness. Okay? So these two are eternally separate entities, but in relation to each other, they are always together. Prakriti is nature power, executive power. It is energy apart from consciousness. For consciousness belongs to the Purusha. Prakriti without Purusha is inert, mechanical, inconscient. Clear? The river is flowing, no consciousness anyway, just mechanical action. The wind is blowing, the sunlight is coming, the storm is coming. There is no person there, or there is no personality, no consciousness. Mechanical action. So mechanical that you can even forecast and say this will happen, because it's subjected to laws, physical laws. Okay, so that's it. You can say even today that 1000 years from now, you can forecast when there will be an eclipse, because it's mechanical. Okay? So Prakriti without Purusha is inert, mechanical, inconscient. Prakriti develops as its formal self and basis of action primal matter, and in it manifests life and sense and mind and intelligence. So Prakriti is creating forms. Prakriti is nature. And it is creating forms. We see that. Nature is creating trees, creating animals and all. It is creating. But what is it creating out of? What is the substance it is creating out of? It's creating out of primal matter. Primal matter is the subtlest of substance, which is infinite, and you can make any number of forms, but it will never be exhausted. The primal matter is the word they use in the Sankhya is pradhana, the main. Pradhana. That is the substance which is itself featureless, stable, eternal, infinite. And out of that substance, nature is making forms. Okay? It is like you have a vast store of water, which is formless, just one stretch of water, and you start pouring it into small vessels. And the vessel is a form. It can be any form. It can be a microbe, it can be a caterpillar, it can be a rabbit, it can be a dog, cat, human being, anything. It can be the mountains, it can be the trees, any form in the physical world. It's made out of this substance. The one becoming the many. Okay? So, consciousness belongs to Purusha. Prakriti without Purusha is inert, mechanical, inconscient. Prakriti develops as its formal self and basis of action primal matter, and in it manifests life and sense and mind and intelligence. Clear? All these things it creates one by one. But intelligence too, since it is part of nature and its product in primal matter, is also inert, mechanical, inconscient. A conception which sheds a certain light on the order and perfectly related workings of the inconscient in the material universe. Now, this needs a little bit of an explanation. He is saying that intelligence is mechanical. So you have to understand what he is saying.
And inert.
Yeah. It is inert in this sense that it is not conscious, it is mechanical. Even intelligence in the physical world. Okay? And if at level 1, there is matter, there is life, and there is mind. But mind at level 1 is mechanical, and it is also subject to laws, fixed laws. So what is meant exactly by this? In other words, it's a very interesting thing because modern science has also come to that. You are thinking with your mind and you think, I am thinking, I am conscious, I can do what I want with my mind. This is the ego which is interpreting it in that way. Actually, you are not using your mind at all. It is universal nature which is using your mind. Just as universal nature is using matter to create forms, universal nature is also determining the reactions of vital and mind. It puts thoughts into your mind and it is mechanical. It works mechanically. Now, this is a very important thing because can you create a robot? Today, this is the whole question. And very last 2-3 days, some very frightening things have come up. Artificial intelligence.
Yes.
So, can you create a man? You can create a body with steel, a robot. You can create life prana with a battery. Okay? Can you create intelligence? Yes, with a computer.
Yeah.
So you have a robot which is working in restaurants and other places. You just tell them, okay, what you want, and they will understand, record everything, go back and do exactly what is needed. So does this mean that the artificial intelligence of robots can act independently of human beings? Wait a minute.
It seems that they can.
Wait a minute. The latest news from Japan is that one robot exactly did that. It killed the scientists. That's a report in the last.
Yes.
So you are entering into a very, very dangerous area and you have to be very careful with what you're doing with nature.
Yes.
So, mechanical. So what you think is, see, it's very, if you start from a calculator, okay, 2 plus 4, the machine will tell you 6 because you have programmed it.
Right.
Okay. Now, is it true that our intelligence also is getting programmed? Yes.
Yes.
Because when a child is born, his mind is not programmed. So he doesn't understand anything. He hears sounds, he hears his mother talking, he eats food, he is hungry, he shouts, he cries, but he understands nothing at all. It has to be programmed for response. Okay? Now that's interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
So, and depending on which country and where you are, the programming is different. Okay? You start believing things according to what you have been programmed to do. The environment programs you. Okay, partly hereditary also. The only difference between a robot and a human being is that a human being has consciousness is there both places, intelligence, but the soul.
Yeah.
Now that's a question. Now, is it possible that all human beings have a soul? Soul it may have, but not necessarily a psychic being.
Psychic being, yes, exactly.
Okay. There have been cases where mother has identified some people without a psychic being. Okay. So, this is the thing. So, it's mechanical. That's what he's saying. And this is what today artificial intelligence is confirming.
So how did it kill that man?
These details I have not seen, but it's a very short thing. And the report also said that the report has to be confirmed. Okay. But it is true that it has the capacity of learning. Okay. For instance, you make a robot and if you have a car usually has only 4 wheels because it goes on a very flat and uniform road. But suppose it has to go on the moon surface with rocks. So you can't do it 4 wheels. You need 6 wheels and each one will be adjustable. Okay, so it adjusts itself, but it has the capacity to learn how to negotiate the next rock because there is a feedback mechanism. So it learns. Computers learn and adapt themselves.
Isaac Asimov predicted this many years ago, that there would be a conscious intelligence in robots.
Yes. So this discussion is going on from long time. Is artificial intelligence really a dangerous thing? Are we playing with fire? We don't know. But see what he's saying. Prakriti develops as its formal self and basis of action, primal matter, and in it manifests life and sense and mind and intelligence. But intelligence too, since it is part of nature and its product in primal matter, is also inert, mechanical, unconscient, very clear, inconscient. What you think is your intelligence is something wonderful and free and you can go on thinking. No, it's a mechanical thing. Only the soul has got total freedom. And when the soul goes out, it is free. There is no law that binds it down. So that's what he's saying, okay? Inconscient, a conception which sheds a certain light on the order and perfectly related workings of the inconscient in the material universe. Now, I'll discuss this also a little bit. It's a conception which explains many things in the physical world. Okay. Take instinct in animals. That's the best example. It is doing mechanically something that seems to be a logically thought out sequence. But it's not a logically thought out sequence. It's mechanical. Take the flight of birds. Okay, migration of birds. Why should it migrate down south 5,000 miles when winter sets in the northern hemisphere? It goes down 5,000 miles and then comes back again. Okay. Why do fish go again into their source from the sea? They go back again to spawn. Okay. Then why do birds build nests before the eggs are coming? The instinct. But it is done with such precision and so much of... The other day I was seeing a video where one bird builds a nest, okay? But it makes two chambers. One chamber is secret chamber and the other chamber is a big hole, and when the snakes and others come, they will go into the big hole and see that there is nothing. But the smaller same chamber, there is a flap. Intelligence. But is it really intelligence? Mechanical. Okay. All instinct. Take the spider. Okay. It builds a fantastic web to catch insects, and so beautifully. Okay.
Yeah.
What is it? Intelligence? You would feel like that. In fact, Sri Aurobindo gives in the evening talks a very interesting example. He says, I was watching once that if spider was trying to build a web, okay, what is it called?
Yeah.
A web.
Yeah, web.
And it was not succeeding. So what it did, it went and got a small piece of, not a pebble because pebble is too big, but a small piece of, a very small piece of stone, and balanced it. So, think of I'll give you so many examples. These are all mechanical, not conscious, but you feel that there is consciousness. Okay? A bird, that crane, it's got long legs. It stands in the water. It has to catch fish. So what does it do to attract fish? It'll take a dead leaf and throw it on the water. With its long beak, it'll pick up a dead leaf and throw it on the water. The ripples, the fish will think there's an insect there. It'll come up. Immediately the bird will catch it. Intelligence, mechanical action. So what you think is free and mechanical and intelligent action is actually mechanical. That's what he's saying.
Instinctive?
Instinct is nothing but consciousness in the background, but the action itself is without logic and without thought. All animals do that. So you can extend that even to our intelligence. It is largely a mechanical action of nature. Frightening.
Yes.
So, that's what he's saying. Okay? He is saying here a conception which sheds a certain light on the order and perfectly related workings of the inconscient in the material universe. I'll give you another example. Okay? Take plants, they require water and sunlight, but they require it in a certain quantity. Okay? If it is more, there is a disaster. If it is less, there is a disaster. But plants have the capacity to adjust themselves to the environment. How is that? Intelligence. There is a cactus in a desert will reduce its need of water. In a swamp, the plant will adjust itself to the excess water. That's what he's saying. If you give examples to yourself of what he's saying, it becomes clear. So mainly in this, what he's saying, a conception which sheds a certain light on the order and perfectly related workings of the inconscient in the material universe, instinct of animals. Okay? So you don't think you're free, you're not free. Then, in the light of the soul, the spirit that is imparted to the mechanical workings of sense, mind and intelligence. Again he is repeating. Mechanical workings of intelligence. Okay? They become conscious by its consciousness. Even as they become active only by the assent of the spirit. It is the consciousness which is there in the background. Just like I like to give the example of the prompter behind in the wings of the stage. Okay? And whispering what they should do next. If the actor forgets his lines, the lines are immediately conveyed to him from the audience does not see. So there is a guidance from there. So Srimad explains instinct in that way. He says there is intuition which is working at the physical level from behind. But it is sending sufficient impulse and sufficient suggestions for it to work flawlessly without thought.
And when he speaks of the workings of sense mind?
Yes. The sense mind is there in animals and also in us. Again, examples, body consciousness. The body consciousness is not thought, but there is so much of logic in it.
Mm-hmm.
When you sneeze, what is the body doing? The body is saying, this is a foreign body, I don't want it. It is rejecting it. When you cough, it's the same. When your food goes down, it should go down the esophagus. But instead of going down into the esophagus, it may sometimes stray into the trachea, into the windpipe. Then there is a violent throwback. So, who is doing that? Are you doing it thoughtfully? The body is doing it. So that's a body consciousness. Again the same thing. There is a consciousness hiding, but it is mechanical. Your cough is mechanical, you will admit. Okay. When you get a cut, the body knows that this is dangerous and it goes about repairing it. Immediately it seals it by coagulating the blood. It's a self mechanism that protects itself. Thinking? No. Mechanical action. Seems to be so intelligent. But it is. Everything in the body is like that. Huh? Think of the function of the kidneys. Okay? So, it knows which is harmful and throws it out, and it knows what is useful and puts it back into the bloodstream. So, everything is like that. Take the stomach. The more you think about it, the more you will be stunned. Okay, really. Take the stomach. If you eat meat, the stomach is digesting it. Your stomach itself is meat. Why doesn't it digest itself? Because there is again a mechanical action which coats the lining, inner lining of the stomach so that it doesn't get affected. Sometimes this mechanism doesn't work and that you end in an ulcer. That's how you get ulcers. This mechanism is not working very well. So this is exactly what he's saying. And he's saying that so clearly. But if you give examples to yourself, it becomes clear what he's saying. Otherwise, it remains a little hazy and vague. So now see, A conception which sheds a certain light on the order and perfectly related workings of the inconscient in the material universe. It is the light of the soul, the spirit, that is imparted to the mechanical workings of sense mind. So the sense mind is being guided from behind by the. So it seems to be very logical, but it is mechanical.
But it's being guided.
Yes, there is a guidance. Because sometimes animal instincts can go wrong. If they don't follow their instinct and do something wrong, okay, then it doesn't work. I have seen birds trying to build a nest and unable to build a nest because they are taking twigs which are too big. They are not being able to build a nest. One day I was going in a particular house, in an art house, and I saw under the mango tree a large pieces of, these twigs, but they're not twigs, they're large, too large. And I wondered from where they're coming, who could have thrown these here. I looked up and saw these two crows trying to build a nest, but not succeeding. So this is what they say, okay, which sheds a certain light on the order and perfectly related workings of the inconscient in the material universe. It is the light of the soul, the spirit, that is imparted to the mechanical workings of sense mind and intelligence. They become conscious by its conscious. So there is seems to be some sort of consciousness, but it's largely mechanical. It's guided by because after all there is a logic in the building of a web by the spider. There's a logic. Okay, there's a logic in all that the animals do, but it is mechanical.
But he says they become conscious by its consciousness.
Yes, that means
so there, with us also, there is a consciousness,
which is the instinct. The consciousness which is imparted to them becomes the instinct at that level.
Okay, clear.
Okay, so they become conscious by its consciousness. In other words, if that consciousness is not there, even the mechanical thing will become chaotic. That's what it's meaning. Even as they become active only by the assent of the spirit. So, Purusha is the one that says to Prakriti, yes, do what you are doing, I allow you to do it. Okay? So, this is what normally happens. Now, this is a very interesting thing because even in the yogic field, this can happen. I'll give you an example. This consciousness which is guiding is so important. So I'll tell you an example where it doesn't work. Okay. So in the physical world here, what is centralizing our being and making it very, very logical, step by step, orderly? It's the ego. You are conscious of yourself as a person, and that's the ego. And so the ego centralizes all your actions and makes it purposeful and meaningful. Sometimes you may see people who are not very developed. You will see that their actions are very haphazard and they don't order their life with intention. Floaters. You will see that if you are very observant. But mostly human beings there is a purpose in what they do. Okay? So this is ego which is doing that. Now, in the spiritual consciousness, when you go up, out of your body-mind life, you lose your ego. Ego is not there anymore. The sense of separateness is not there. So you lose your ego. So if you have lost your ego, the centralization of the being, something else must replace it. Otherwise it will be chaotic. So that centralization of the consciousness is done by the true individual. But if sometimes the true individual is not there, there will be chaotic action. This happens in yoga. There are 4 things that happen. They say, Jadavat, that means you will behave like a stone. Okay? Because there is no guidance, there is no centralization. Or Pishachavat, Unmattavat, Balavat. You will be behaving like a little baby. You are an adult, but you will be behaving like a little baby. This is what happens. So you must develop yourself fully, and then when you are giving up the ego, it must be replaced by the true individual. If the true individual is not there, okay, and you are in a cosmic consciousness without true individuality, you will be moving about like a vagabond. It's a regular phenomenon in yoga. Balavat, unmattavat, pishachavat, jadavat. Jadavat means you will be like a stone, inert. Okay? Or you will be like a little child. Or you will be like a ghoul, wandering about, okay? Or a madman. We have had examples of mad people in the ashram, and also one case of where he was behaving like a little child, okay? Very, very innocent, but living at a very high level of consciousness. We used to in fact call him Shuren Pagla. And mother was very solicitous to him. And when he passed away, his experiences came out in one of our magazines, and what heights of consciousness and experience. So, this is what the consciousness behind guiding the apparent mechanical force is necessary. If it is not there, chaos. Okay? As they become active by this. So, in other words, what he's saying is, they become conscious by its consciousness, even as they become active only by the ascent of the spirit. So, the spirit behind the soul is allowing nature to act, giving permission to it. Okay? Passively permission is given. But when it goes to the spiritual levels of consciousness, you have the choice of either withdrawing your permission or giving it further permission. So, this is what happens.
So, if the permission is withdrawn,
yes,
you have these four conditions.
No, not the four conditions. When you withdraw your condition, you are fully developed. It's not absence of the true individual. It's the true individual who says, "Oh, I see anger in my body. I don't like it. I see greed in the body. I see desire. I don't want it." You stop the permission. Then slowly, that habit which has become a habit because of persistent permission, that permission not being given, in other words, you are not feeding it energy. So slowly the energy, the accumulated energy spends itself. Again, I told you about the scooter. Is exactly the idea. If you think of the scooter, then this phenomenon becomes very clear. I am going on a scooter, okay? I want to save petrol. 100 meters before I switch off. The scooter doesn't stop immediately. So even if you don't want your desire and your anger, it will continue until it exhausts itself. So that's what happens. Okay? So we go back to our, even as they become active only by the ascent of the spirit. So the spirit has to be there, allowing nature to do or not allowing nature at another time. Okay? At a higher level. The Purusha becomes free by drawing back from Prakriti. This sentence is very clear. What it means is, the Purusha is your soul. It is in your body-mind life, trapped in the prison of body-mind life, and you think that you are doing all this. Actually, the soul identifies itself with body-mind life. It's in ignorance. But through yoga, when you manage to free yourself and you go out of the body-mind life, then it is free of Prakriti. It is free of the body-mind life. That's liberation. Okay? The Purusha becomes free by drawing back from Prakriti. It becomes master of her by refusing to be involved in matter or your body-mind life. So that's what the ascetic does. I don't want body-mind life. He becomes free. He has a choice to disappear into the infinite. Okay? The Purusha becomes free by drawing back from Prakriti. It becomes master of her by refusing to be involved in matter. Nature acts by three principles, modes or qualities of its stuff and its action. So, which in us become the fundamental modes of our psychological and physical substance and its workings. The principle of inertia, which is tamas, the principle of kinesis, which is rajas, and the principle of balance, light, and harmony, which is sattva. So these are the three principles acting in the physical world, corresponding to matter, life, and mind. Matter is basically dense and doesn't want to act. It is dead. But when life comes out, life is the opposite. Life is something living, not dead. So it's the opposite of this. So that is energy. In matter also there is energy, but it is sleeping. We have learned to wake it to a certain extent by extracting energy out of it. In many ways, we extract energy. Okay, so matter is tamas, rajas is vital, not is vital, the vital has the quality of rajas, energy, action, and the mind is that of knowledge. It is slowly becoming knowledge. That's a sattva. So this is the Sankhya philosophy. And it is very, very valid at this level. At level 1 and level 2 it is valid. But if you go higher up, it's not valid anymore. Because Purusha and Prakriti become one. Okay? Which becomes the fundamental modes of our psychological and physical substance and its workings. The principle of inertia, the principle of kinesis, and the principle of balance, light, and harmony. When these are in unequal motion, her action takes place. Okay? When they fall into equilibrium, she passes into quiescence. So, this is, we can explain another way, this substance which we spoke about, the primal matter, the substance which is everywhere one and stable, there is no creation. That's what happens when your consciousness goes up into the nirvana consciousness. You are creating nothing and you are in absolutely stable condition. You are absolutely calm and quiet and looking down. The action is taking place all below, but you are only watching. You are the witness. Okay? There is a universal principle and there is an individual principle. They merge. Okay? Whatever is there in the universe is there also in the individual. So, there is a consciousness in the universe which is only watching and which is not acting. Purusha, which is static. And Prakriti is the one that is constantly creating and moving and ever mutable. Okay? So, Purusha, he is still explaining the Sankhya philosophy. Okay. There is another interesting thing. If you start wondering why these three principles are there. Okay, tamas, rajas and sattva. Is tamas, we are trying to, tamas, darkness, okay, stability, permanence, is it necessary? It is very necessary. And that's why it takes on. But it's got negative connotations for us because we have come out of tamas. Because if tamas is not there, there will be no stability of forms. And if there is no stability of forms, which we interpret as laziness or torpor, okay, but it is necessary. Because if I am sitting on this chair and this chair goes on changing its form, how I am going to live in the physical world? If I am talking to you and your face starts changing, okay, to whom am I talking? So stability is very essential and that is provided by tamas. But is stability, if only stability is there is no progress. So energy is the next level to change that stability. So slowly life comes out and there is progress. But mechanical progress. So it comes again to knowledge, the next level. So these three at the lower level, the sattva, tamas and rajas are essential. It's very interesting how this, you have to see it in that way. So now we continue with the Sankhya philosophy. Now there is another thing. When the sea is absolutely stable, there is no creation. No forms are there. But when the sea starts making waves, each wave is a form. So there is creation. In other words, creation is possible only with energy and movement. When there is no energy and no movement, there is no creation. So this is another interesting thing which we have to see. So, but I see a stone. It is a form. But where is the energy? I don't see any energy in it. You are not seeing, but the energy is there. Go down to the atomic level. Constant energy is there. Movement is there. So all forms imply energy and movement. All non-creation imply stability. So this is the Sankhya philosophy. I am going into a little detail to explain the various aspects. So Sankhya is very, very applicable at these lower levels.
And the next level also. Yes.
At the highest level, it's not applicable.
Right.
Okay. Purusha, conscious being, is plural. Now, this is again in the Sankhya philosophy. You have a soul, you have a soul, I have a soul. You have a Purusha, you have a Purusha, I have a Purusha. But your soul is not her soul. So there is plural. So Sankhya says Purusha is plural. But Advaita is saying, wait. Don't judge it at this level. Go higher up and you will see that the soul of everybody is the same. So they have the idea that Purusha is only one because you are seeing it from that level. But Sankhya is seeing from this level and saying all different. Valid. Okay? When you go to the cosmic consciousness, you realize that your soul is the soul of everybody else. That's a cosmic consciousness.
But you said that each soul has a particular gift, if I could say, to the world.
And also, characteristics. Yes, absolutely. But it loses its limitations and becomes cosmic. Again, to understand that, go back to the image of the grain of salt and the sea. It loses its characteristics, but it is still essentially the soul, consciousness. Okay? So, when they fall into equilibrium, passes into quiescence. There is no creation. So, when your sattva, rajas and tamas are active, then you are prisoner in your body, mind, life. There is no liberation. But there is creation and there is the physical world is there. But when they become equal, which you achieve by silence in the mind and samatha in the heart, okay, then your soul escapes. And that is liberation and you are in a static condition. Alright, that's what he's saying. So, Purusha, conscious being, is plural, not one and single, while nature is one. In the Sankhya philosophy at the lower level, it would seem to follow that whatever principle of oneness we find in existence belongs to nature. But each soul is independent and unique, there you are, soul to itself and separate, whether in its enjoyment of nature or its liberation from nature. Even when it goes up into the spiritual planes of consciousness, the individual soul is seen. The individual soul experiences the cosmic consciousness. I feel myself to be one with everybody else, but who is experiencing that? The individual. But the individual is not now limited to the body, mind, life. It's essentially the consciousness which is experiencing itself as one with everybody else. Okay, so, but each soul is independent and unique, soul to itself and separate, whether in its enjoyment of nature or its liberation from nature. All these positions of the Sankhya we find to be perfectly valid in experience when we come into direct inner contact with the realities of the individual soul and universal nature. But they are pragmatic truths, and we are not bound to accept them as the whole or the fundamental truth, either of self or of nature. There are other levels of consciousness where it is not true. Because you can rise to another level of consciousness and see, oh, I thought my soul is different from her soul, but now I see that essentially it's the same. When you are having a pain, I too am feeling the pain. When you are having enjoyment, I also enjoy your enjoyment. There is a oneness everywhere. So that's what he's saying. So Sankhya does not apply anymore there. Okay? Yeah. Prakriti presents herself as an inconscient energy in the material world, but as the scale of consciousness rises, she reveals herself more and more as a conscious force, and we perceive that even her inconscience concealed a secret consciousness. So too conscious being is many in its individual souls, but in itself we can experience it as one in all and one in its own essential existence. So we are going beyond Sankhya if you experience that. Moreover, the experience of soul and nature as dual is true, but the experience of their unity also has its validity. The unity of Prakriti and Purusha is at the highest level, and that also is valid. Purusha and Prakriti become one. Permanently they become one at this third level in the supermind. But you can have the experience of their oneness even in the lower planes, but only for a brief time. You have the experience and it comes down. Okay? So, moreover, the experience of soul and nature as dual is true, but the experience of the unity also has its validity. If nature or energy is able to impose its forms and workings on being, it can only be because it is nature or energy of being, and so the being can accept them as its own. If the being can become lord of nature, it must be because it's its own nature which it had passively watched doing its work, but can control and master. So, we are almost at the end of it, but I'll stop here because this also is something important. We have to understand what he's saying. If nature or energy is able to impose its forms and workings on being, so what is he saying? He is saying that your body-mind life is dominating your soul at the individual level, but it's also true at the universal level. So, your body-mind life is nature, and it is dominating over your soul. How is that possible? Because they are essentially the same. That's what he's saying. So, they are inversely proportional to each other is what you realize. I'll explain what I mean. In matter, energy is total. We agree to that. There is constant energy. Is there consciousness? There is, but it is hiding. It has been controlled by force. As you rise in consciousness, soul awakens. And when you go to the self, the consciousness increases and there is no more any action. So what has happened? Now Purusha is dominating and keeping Prakriti under control. So in other words, they are inversely proportional to each other. In matter, Prakriti is master. Mechanical energy is master and controlling the soul, consciousness. As it keeps rising, first life, then mind, then the spiritual life, then your consciousness becomes absolutely full and energy is held back. Here in the lower level, consciousness is there but hiding. You can say hiding or you can say controlled by force. You can say that. At the higher level also, consciousness is full but there doesn't seem to be any force. There is force but it's controlled. Just like horses which are about to start a race. Okay, the styles are all down and the horses are about to start. They are static. Can you say that they are without force? You can't. There is force but held back. Like the water behind the dam. It's full of force but it's held back. It is static. So this is the thing what he is saying. At level 1, at our level, force is dominating over the consciousness. That's why we are not conscious of our soul. Okay? when you are spiritually, you are in the second level of consciousness, you are fully conscious. And you see body, mind, life outside yourself, you see, and you are now not allowing any force. You are in a nirvana consciousness, static condition. Force is there, but controlled by consciousness.
So it's not totally stopped, it's just controlled.
That's right. It is inactive. So when you use the words mutable and immutable, you have to understand in this way. Okay? So they are always together. That's what Sankhya is saying. But they are in different proportions. When you go to the supermind, they are equal to each other. Neither is force the king, nor is consciousness the king. They cooperate each other fully. So this is Sankhya philosophy and the difference with the Advaita philosophy. Okay, so if the being can become lord of nature, it must be because it's its own nature which it had passively was doing its work, but can control and master. Even in its passivity, its consent is necessary to the action of Prakriti, and this relation shows sufficiently that the two are not alien to each other. So you have to go beyond the Sankhya philosophy. They are both equally true and equally present, and they become one at the highest level. Okay, so the duality is a position taken up, a dual status accepted for the operations of the self-manifestation of the being. When there is manifestation, necessarily that will be forms, and forms means activity, and so there is a consciousness which is static and there is a consciousness which is active. So in the physical world, the activity is dominating the silence. At the spiritual level, the silence is dominating the activity. Okay? So, but there is no eternal and fundamental separateness and dualism of being and its conscious force of the soul and nature. So there is no essential difference like the Sankhya is insisting on, that Purusha and Prakriti, Chit and Shakti, okay, consciousness and force are always together but separate, not true at the higher levels. That's what Swami is saying. And that's the Advaita philosophy. There seems to be multiplicity, but that's at a lower level. At the higher level, no multiplicity. They are all one. So, big paragraph explaining the...
Excellent.
Yeah. But it's quite complicated, but now we have understood. Okay, I'll tell you. You go home, you'll forget. Because there are very subtle truths, Like you have a dream, you remember, but even if you remember when you wake up, after 2 hours or 3 hours, you are likely to forget your dream because it is evanescent. These ideas also are all very subtle and they have to be settled in the mind. That takes a little time. But at present, we have understood. We seem to understand. You try to reformulate them later on, you will see there is some difficulty.
In our next session, could you explain the difference in overhead and overmind?
Okay. I can do that right now.
Okay.
The overhead is a very general term, which includes level 2 and level 3. Overhead, it is above the head, above the body, mind, life. So it can come, when Sridhar speaks of the overhead planes of consciousness, he is meaning that. Amal was the one who asked him, and Sridhar said overhead planes. Your inspiration for poetry can come from the overhead planes of consciousness, they can come from the inner vital, they can come from the environment, they can come from anywhere. They can come from the inner being, they can come from the higher planes. But what is coming down has got its vibrations, and the quality of the vibrations will tell Sri Aurobindo from where it is coming.
And overmind.
Yeah. The overmind or the higher mind or the intuition.
Right.
Okay.
So overhead is more general.
The overmind is a definite plane of consciousness, which is the fourth in the spiritual planes of consciousness, just below the supermind. It's a fixed plane of consciousness. But overhead is a term which you can use for anything, including all these. That's a difference.
Thank you. Wonderful. Namaste all. Thank you so much. A wonderful evening.